Theater. Theater in Amsterdam, maar we zijn een wereldstad, of tenminste dat willen we graag zijn. Dus is er ook theater in Amsterdam dat beïnvloed is of zelfs gemaakt is door mensen ver weg. We gaan vandaag praten met Zakes Mda. En hij is toneelschrijver, maar hij komt uit Zuid-Afrika. En we gaan praten over een project van de Nieuw Amsterdam. Die heeft namelijk samen met een groep uit Zuid-Afrika, de Sibikwa Community Theatre Project, zijn ze bezig om een toneelstuk te produceren. Dat wordt dus nu geschreven. Het onderwerp is de Bells, de klokken van Amersfoort. En het gaat over de brug tussen rassen, tussen Zuid-Afrika, tussen Nederland. En de toneelschrijver, dus Zakes Mda, is hier in de studio. We gaan met hem praten over dit project dat al een hele tijd loopt. Want de mensen van de Nieuw Amsterdam, DNA noemen ze dat, dat is wel een aardige woordspeling, zijn ook in Zuid-Afrika geweest om met die groep mensen daar te praten. Maar we gaan eerst even praten over toneelschrijven in Zuid-Afrika. Welkom, Zakes.
Oh, thank you.
And your last name is Mda, and there we immediately Mda. We are in the problem that South Africa has many languages. Huh?
Yes, we have about 11 official languages in South Africa. Yeah,
and they are quite different sometimes from ours, from the languages that we know, like Latin or.
Well, some of them are, but one of them, which is Afrikaans.
Yeah, that we know.
has many words and sentence phrases which are very similar to Dutch. Yeah. But then other languages, especially the black languages, are completely different from the European languages. Yeah.
Now I understand that. Is there one, or are there several original South Afrikaans languages? What means that the black people that used to live there, and that is not the people that live there now because they migrated from the north, but is there something like original Bushman or
well, you see, we still have, for instance, the people you would call the Bushmen. Yeah. They call them the San people, and the people you would call, who were called the Hottentots, who are in fact the Khoi people. Who still maintain their languages. But then even other black languages, like Xhosa, for instance, you see with a click.
The Xhosa, yeah.
That language, in fact, you see, originates from the Bushman languages which were there. That's why it has similar clicks. It also comes from the Khoi languages, or the people who are called the Hottentots. Yes.
Yeah. I always imagine that the first day that the Dutch farmers came there, was the 1600s?
In the 1600s,
yes.
Yeah.
They must have been amazed about these strange people living there in conditions in the desert that were like very strange to them. Huh?
Yeah, although of course the place was not quite a desert because,
Cape Town was already
where the Dutch first came. It's a very, very beautiful place, with trees and green and and beautiful flowers and all that.
Yeah, Cape the Good Hope, yes, was.
That's why they called it that. Yes. Yeah.
It was the place when they went to India.
It
was the most southern point, and there the place where they found fresh water and fruit.
Fresh water and more provisions for their trip.
Cruise. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so. You're South African, but in what language did you grow up?
Well, as a South African, I grew up speaking a number of languages. My father was a lawyer, and at home, we spoke mostly Xhosa and English. So English was one of the languages that was spoken, you see. But then when I grew up, because my
just a strange question, but Xhosa is like all the clicking. They don't make a hole in their mouth or something like that. It sounds like that.
Well, with the and all that, because you'll find that there is no sentence without a click, But to us, those clicks are just normal. They are very musical, you see. Yeah.
To you, there is a great difference. For us, it's all clicks, but for you, it's.
Oh yeah, each click is done differently and has a different meaning, you see.
It's like computers, you know, when you click on the computer, click.
Yeah.
It's really a modern language because it's a click language.
Yeah, right. Yes.
Okay, so but you grew up with, and you say most people come with many languages. So their tribal language, their
Well, you see, especially if you grow up in the city, like I did, you'll find that in any city, people there speak many different languages. You see, so as they grow up, they learn other languages. They speak their language at home, but in the street, they speak other languages as well. Right. So it is possible for a child growing up in Johannesburg, for instance, to grow up speaking about 6 or 7 languages.
Is there pride connected, or cultural separation? Like Yiddish, for instance, in Amsterdam was spoken for a while, and because the Jewish community wanted their own language, and they had their own schools, and they felt secure in their separation. Is it the same that people that, for instance, speak Xhosa, they know the white people cannot understand them?
Well, you see, of course, each ethnic group there, the Xhosa, the Zulu, the Sotho, are very proud of their culture and of their
language,
of their languages, you see. But of course, they are also proud of their South Africanism, as one nation with different cultures, a multicultural society.
And do they see English as the lingua franca, which is a strange word, but the connecting language for everybody?
Well, you see, English, yes, is generally the language of commerce, really. Yeah. So
to do business, you go to a shop.
Well,
in a big city.
Yeah, you find that in the general trade and industry, English is predominant. Okay. But the people of South Africa feel that even the other languages must be promoted up to that level, so that it should be possible for me to get good service in Xhosa, for instance, or in
let's take an extreme example, because you are a writer, you have to work with all these, as a playwright, with these sentiments. But if you would call your your stockbroker, for instance, and you would say, well, the Nasdaq is going down and I want to order these and these stocks.
It's going to be in English.
Yes? You cannot do that in Xhosa?
I cannot do that in Xhosa, no.
There's no words for stock, for instance, there, or is there?
Well, no. Actually, there are words, because you know that languages develop, with the modern times. So there are words, that have been invented to deal with the modern world as well.
Yeah, but do you use like the word internet or stock in the English word in the Xhosa discussions?
Well, you see, just like Afrikaans, for instance, when it started, originating from Dutch, but also from other local languages, because it is a hybrid of languages. Now, since Afrikaans was used at schools, even at universities, it had to develop new words for to deal with the modern world, to deal with modern technology, to an extent that now it is a highly developed language. It is the same then with other African languages, Xhosa, English, Sotho, and so on. As the times change, they also develop new words to deal with the new technologies that have come with the modern world. So that is happening, yes. So you can listen to news, for instance, in Xhosa, news which will tell you about things that are happening in Holland here or in America, and which will have words about the new technologies.
But like,
and
for instance,
the modern
word
world.
Holland, the Xhosa word for Holland is still Holland, or is it click, click, whatever?
Well, it will be Holland, of course.
Yeah. Like that. You don't have, like the French have French words for everything. They make new words, yes? But here we use the word internet, although it's an English word. And you would use the word internet.
We would use the word internet.
Excitement is mounting here in downtown Johannesburg, with the upcoming trials of some of South Africa's most notable figures. No Ngawuse has been brought back from the dead and is due to go on trial. She is charged with the deaths of thousands of Xhosa people.
Respectfully, sir, please tell the court your name.
Ndingusaqile nyana kaHintsa.
And what was your occupation in 1856?
Ndandiyinkosi enkulu yakwaGcaleka. Ukumkani wamaXhosa onke nalawo ahlala emihlabeni eyathinjwa ngabamhlophe abathi iBritish Kaffraria.
Please tell the court the circumstances your people were in at the time.
Andinamazwi okuchaza ububi bemeko ngoko. We were at war with the British invaders for almost 100 years. One frontier war after the other. The wars they called Kaffir Wars. The British have driven us off our land all the way back to the Kai River. They were so close. We could see them across the river from our kraals.
When was the first time you heard about the prophecies of Nonqawuse?
It was the winter months in 1856 when I heard of the prophecies of this girl.
What exactly did you hear?
They said wonders were happening at Qacha. Everybody started to flock there to see with their own eyes what was being prophesied by this Nonqawuse girl of Mhlakaza.
And what did you do upon receiving these reports?
I rode from a great place in Oita, a journey of many days, to the sea at the mouth of the river Qacha. There I was received at the homestead of Mhlakaza. That is where I was told about the prophecies.
Now, you're a writer, and you're here to basically to get your basic storyline, which was the clock of Amersfoort, the bells of Amersfoort.
The bells of Amersfoort, yes.
Into a real play.
Right, yes.
What is the main theme of the?
Well, you see, this play traces the life of a woman who was a political activist during the days of apartheid in South Africa. And then she was arrested there. When she was in jail, then, she used to hear bells when, on Sundays, people going to church, and she was in solitary confinement. When she managed to escape from prison, she came to live in Holland as a refugee, you see. And then she was based in Amersfoort, where she also heard these bells, But now, of course, she's in a free country. Now, these bells, as they rang, they would take her back in memory to the days when she was in prison in South Africa. You see that? In Amersfoort, of course, she also interacts with the Dutch society and also with fellow South African exiles of different persuasions. She, for instance, meets an Afrikaner, who has come to Amersfoort also, but not as a refugee, but to study theology, because many of our Afrikaner people during the days of did come over here for further studies and so on. So it traces then the human relations, between herself and fellow South Africans in a new environment of Holland, and between herself and the Dutch people in Amersfoort.
Okay, so you have found a way to bridge these two nations. But in the play, will it be actually, how do you call it, going back in time? There will be scenes about Africa, or will it?
Oh, yes, definitely. Although the play opens in Amersfoort when she's already here,
Yeah.
But then there are flashbacks
That's-
whereby we are taken back to her life in Africa, you see.
Okay.
Because, you see, we see now of the various connections that this country has had with South Africa throughout history,
Yeah.
you see, and that comes through her memory.
Okay. Now her memory is from the time that there was apartheid and that prisons like Robben Island were used to have the people incarcerated.
And perhaps even before that, because you
Before
see,
that, but-
because her memory goes even beyond her own lifetime. You know, it goes to a historical memory as well. Yeah.
Now the criticism that might be is that in this way South Africa is portrayed as in the past, while today we all hope that South Africa will evolve in a multicultural nation where there is peace and where there is prosperity.
Which is what South Africa is striving for.
Yes.
But then you see, it cannot achieve that without memory. We feel that memory is very important in as far as dealing with the present, because we are all products of the past. That is why now this play, in fact, does not just end with the past. It now takes us to the present. You see that? Mm-hmm. And we see now, we look at human relations between her and her fellow oppressors in present-day South Africa, looking at present-day situations.
Okay.
Yes.
Now it's very important. What I like to talk with you about is the differences in language, but also in understanding. You said it's important that we keep the past, the history, close to our heart. Now,
Yes.
from the cultures in South Africa, written history only started maybe 150 or 200 years ago. Much of those traditions were oral traditions. There were singing. Is there, in your emotional things about writing, a different
Yes.
feeling than that you think that we have about history? For me, history is books. It's I can go to a museum and I can look at the stuff and I can see the books and it's text. Yes.
Yes.
And maps and things that are external. They're not songs. Yeah, maybe the Wilhelmus talks about Willem van Nassau, our national anthem. But there are no songs in my heart. There is no connectedness with history. It's a separate thing. It's a book.
Yes.
Yes. The West has put its history first in books. Now you can look at the internet.
Yeah.
We've made films
Yeah.
about it, but it's externalized. Is that different in South Africa for your culture?
Well, it is different, but also it is not different. I'll explain what I mean. You know, many people are not aware that in Africa, there are many cultures there which have had, you know, forms of writing long, long before the white people came. If you look at, you know, ancient civilizations, you know, ancient empires of, like in Ghana and other East African empires, which had forms of writing and a long tradition of written history.
And when you say
Now-
writing, I know, for instance, in South America, you have
Yes.
writing that was done by knots in a rope.
Right.
To remember the things.
Yes.
And maybe engravings.
Yes.
How was this written down?
Well, for instance, the Soninke people had a form of writing which is known as the Tafinig script, you know, which had its own kind of alphabet. If you go to Timbuktu, for instance, today, in their ancient libraries, you'll find many books there which are written in that Tafinig scripts, and many of them were written around the 4th century AD, you see. And
At about the same time as,
Yeah.
like in Greece, people like Homer lived, and about that same period.
at about that same period. And indeed, many scholars from Europe, from Greece, went to Timbuktu to study at the universities there. So we do have ancient civilizations there, ancient cultures. But also, in other cultures of Africa, because you see there are many different cultures there, where they did not have any form of writing, especially in the cultures of Southern Africa, for instance, the oral tradition was very, very strong. The poetry itself served the function of books. Because you see, these
Well, wait a
epic,
minute. And with poetry and stories, you mean the oral tradition?
the oral,
People knew it by heart and they repeated.
people knew it by heart, and it was passed from one generation to another, exactly as it was. You might find that there is a particular poem which contains the history of a people, a poem which was composed 600 years ago, which is passed because, you see, you have a tradition of poets. From father to son, this poem is passed from father to son, and then the present generation gets to know of the events that happened 500 years ago as a result of that poetry.
But again,
you see,
that is different from having it in writing. You
Yes.
say, okay, Africa has its writing style. But so this oral tradition, which is internalized,
right.
do those poems come with visuals? I mean, do you think that not only the words are passed, but also the visuals that come with it?
Well, you see, the visuals in all cultures,
Yeah?
if we talk visuals such as television, for instance.
But the dream images that you have with it. If
Well, you see, it is theater of the mind,
Exactly.
of course, you
Yeah.
see. Because that is why, I mean, we are so creative, is because we are able to recreate these things in our imagination. You see that?
Yes, please help me, please. Quick. I'm surrounded by people in the court parking lot. No, this is not a hijack. Okay, yes, it is a hijack. Just come quickly, please.
And now I come back to language, because you told me
Yes.
that your son, what's his name?
Zukile.
Zukile.
Yes.
And I asked you, what does it mean? And then you said, I cannot explain that in one simple word, because it contains many things, gentleness and this. I would need a whole
Yes.
line in English to explain that.
You would need many different words to describe that. You see, something which has tranquility in it, something which is graceful, something which is beautiful, and all those words mean different things.
But so you say
Then
you could
if
say...
you take all those words and put them together, then they mean zukile. There is no English word that combines those words, you know.
Okay. Does that mean
into
that
one.
also your
You see.
poems are more concise, more that with less words you can say more?
Sometimes. But of course, sometimes for other things, you might find that
The other way around.
It is the other way around.
Okay.
So each language has its own richness and its own shortcomings.
Yeah. But would you say that this word from your son is from the Xhosa language or from what?
Yes, it's from the Xhosa language.
Where is its strength of the language? Is it in as you say, gentleness? These are words that for me make me see the savannah, see the nature, see people. But it doesn't make me see chips and ones and zeros and ta-ta-ta, yeah?
Yes.
It's a different emotional thing. Would you say that Xhosa is more suitable for describing these tribal ritual things?
Well, it is suitable to describe those feelings and those emotions, but also in its more developed form. It is suitable to describe also
Modern things, yes, but...
the modern world of the computer, you see, of the television. You see that? Because, as I've explained before, it has also developed with time, with new words being created to meet new situations, to deal with the new environment.
You do realize you are under oath?
So help me God.
Good. Now, Anna Maria, you were 9 years old at the time,
Yes, my lord.
and you were a happy little girl.
I'm still very happy.
No, you want to be happy, Anna Maria, but you cannot be happy. Circumstances will not allow you to be happy.
They have decreed that I should not be happy. I've chosen to defy that. I'm happy, your lordship. No argument in the world will persuade me that I'm not.
We digress again. We must stick to the point, Anna Maria. We must not allow irrelevancies to cloud our evidence. Now, you say it was evening and you were sitting at table having supper.
It was my mother, my father, my little brother, and myself. Yes, my lord, we were having supper.
And how old was your little brother?
He was 5 years old at the time.
And your father was the village school teacher.
Yes, my lord. He taught at the local primary school.
And what happened next, Anna Maria?
In fact, he was the principal
What
there.
happened next, Anna Maria?
Writing theater, as you said, recreating something in your mind first,
Yes.
then in the mind of the actors. In this case, there will be actors from South Africa
Right.
and from the New Amsterdam, who is actually, and I should say that, playing a play called
Lysistrata?
Aristophanes with Lysistrata, which is very old Greek
Yes,
theater.
yes.
And now, so next year they will do this,
The Bells of Amersfoort.
the Bells of Amersfoort.
Yes.
But in fact, so you're recreating something in your mind. Now, do you think that the Dutch audience
Uh-huh.
will like South African thinking? I mean, how do we bridge that gap?
Well, you see, we are all human beings, and there are universal themes that we all enjoy. That is why you can enjoy Lysistrata, which was created by the Greeks hundreds of years ago. That is why you can enjoy some of our theater, which has come to this country.
But to give you an idea,
Yeah.
those old Greek plays had a very strict structure.
Yes.
Place, time, characters, they were all the same. Yes? It was not like what you are describing, using playbacks, flashbacks. Yes? It wasn't using changes in time and location. You do.
Yes, well, I'm writing, of course, in the contemporary idiom of theater, you see, which also has its own universal language that people can appreciate here in America, in South Africa, in England, and anywhere else. Yes.
But some of those old things, I mean, we don't play Lysistrata with masks, I think, these days, yes? But they used to use masks for theater. That's what fascinates me, how theater develops from different cultural strings. I mean, is there something very specific in your theater, the way you make theater, that comes back from your Xhosa or from your...
Oh, yes, yes. In fact, you see, we have a very old and long tradition of theater in South Africa, you know, of indigenous theater of the different ethnic groups that live there. But our modern theater, our contemporary theater, a lot of it might use some of those modes and has incorporated them.
Can you give an example? What is typically passed on to this age?
Well, the style of performance itself, you know, and some of the ritualistic forms of theater, the movement that can be interpreted into specific dances that contain meaning in themselves, gestures that contain particular meaning, you know, because they are rooted in those cultures. But then in my case, of course, we modernize those and bring them into some contemporary idiom that can be understood by you here in Holland, by somebody in France, by anywhere else.
Let me try to get it. When I do this, Everybody in Holland knows this is, the Christian to make a cross. So if you do that in a play...
To me too, it means the same thing.
Of course. But a guy comes on the stage and instead of explaining, you give him a white collar and he does that and then he's a priest. You know that immediately. Yeah, that's it.
You know that immediately, yes.
Yeah, you don't have to explain that he is a priest.
Yes.
Now, is there similar gestures in the South African theatre tradition that you say we use and you might not understand? Or
Well, there would be, of course. But then when we use them in a contemporary mode of theatre, we would use them in such a way that they are universally understood. Because if I was to use them exactly as they are used in that ritual, in that culture, even other people from South Africa who are not of that culture would not understand it. You see? Yeah.
I've never heard such rubbish in my life. Have you, Lawrence?
They are trying to save you, Anna Maria.
Oh, they need to save themselves first before they can be in a position to save anybody else.
My lord, I request that I be allowed to lead evidence without further interference from the accused.
Choose my foot. Who is the accused here? You or me?
Of course, you are the accused.
If I'm the accused, then I will speak any time I want.
Proceed, counsel for the defense.
Okay, I've changed my mind. I want to change sides.
this theatre group, the Sibikwa Community Theatre Project, do they play mainly for black audiences or for white audiences or mixed audiences? How does that work?
Oh, they play for all sorts of audiences. They themselves are a predominantly a black theatre group, which is also a theatre school. They are attached to a training college which trains people in acting, in stage management, and other areas of the performing arts. And then they have a wing which is a professional theatre group which performs plays and tours all over South Africa.
And in this case, it comes to Holland, some of them.
Yes.
Yeah. Would you say that there is, like we have had waves of culture coming from South Africa? You know, we had the music and the dances, and every few years there's another musical coming that maybe modernizes a little bit the old dances and whatever, but that has certain impact. Do you think that South Africa has more to offer in bringing this mixture of old culture and political activism here?
Yes, I think so. I think that such cultural exchanges actually enrich both societies, both our society in South Africa and the Dutch. You see, what is most beautiful about this particular project, unlike perhaps the groups that we have seen coming from South Africa, is that it is a joint production, you know, where we have South African actors together with Dutch actors together creating and performing a play, first of all here in the Netherlands, and then later taking that play to South Africa as well. So the challenge now is to create the kind of a play that will fascinate the audiences both here and in South Africa as well. You see, that's quite a challenge.
Making bridges between...
Bridges, definitely.
Yes, and thereby using the old bridge we have, which was Afrikaans and apartheid and all those things. And it's quite interesting that you take the religion there too as part of it, because of course the old Protestant religions from Holland were very dominant in South Africa.
Were very dominant and played a very big role, in fact, in South Africa.
Do they still play a big role?
Well, yes, indeed, religion still does play a big role in some aspects of life in South Africa.
Yeah. Well, a few days ago here there was a meeting of a quiet demonstration. Actually, it wasn't very quiet, but in the Bijlmermeer, which is a predominantly black area, against violence on the street.
Yes.
Unnecessary, senseless violence.
Yeah.
And I'm always amazed to see that if something happens there's always the church. In this case, the Evangelische Broedergemeenschap, which is a church that probably is there in South Africa. But the mixture of religion and political activism and say social awareness in general is so strong. I mean, it starts in the church, it ends in the church, and the church is part of life.
Definitely. And you'll find that, in fact, in a country like South Africa, religion played both a negative role and a positive role. For instance, if you look at apartheid itself, the Afrikaners used religion to justify it, that, well, it is God who created it, like that. Those who fought against apartheid, you know, we have...
They use the same Bible.
They use the same Bible to fight against it, you know. So we found that, you see, we had domineers from both sides, you know. We had people like Desmond Tutu, Beyers Naudé, fighting against apartheid. Then we had the leaders of apartheid, some of them who were domineers trained here in the Netherlands, you see, supporting apartheid and using the Bible to support apartheid.
Okay. There is another part of religion in South Africa, which is the old traditions, the old black traditions.
Yes.
Do they still play a role?
Oh, yes, yes, yes. In fact, more so now than before. You still find that, in fact, you know, they've always been strong, those traditional religions. Because even amongst the people who have been Christianized, on Sunday he would go to church and pray in the modern Christian way. Then when he comes back from church, he would sacrifice an animal for the ancestors. You see that? So you find that the ancestors continued to be a dominant feature of the lives of the black people in South. Even today, it is like that.
Yeah, does that also go for, say, healing? Yeah.
Yes, for healing. In fact, you see, those traditional religions play a very, very important role in all aspects of a person's life, of a black person's life. You see. So, however Christianized people are, even the priests themselves, black priests of different churches, they still continue to believe in the ancestors as well.
But is that also honored? Let's use the word honored by the government and by the white people from the past, because they were very Christian, you know, Protestant. Do they honor? Do they accept the fact that the black people have their own?
Well, oh yes, now they do, but of course in the beginning they did not, because when the white people first came, they tried to destroy the traditional religions. You know, they say, oh, this is heathen.
That's heathen. It's animistic.
Heathen, and all
superstition.
That. Superstition and so on. But you see, those religions were so strong that even when people were converted into Christianity, they still held very strongly to these traditional religions.
That's clear. Is that because the values of the traditional religions were more oriented towards the nature, towards healing, towards health of not only the people, but of everything around us?
I think you have got it correctly when you put it that way. Yes, indeed, you see. These religions were deeply rooted in the very, very core of the humanity of the people. And the values that these religions taught, you see, are the kind of values that people could not do without.
Maybe we come to a subject that is a little bit sensitive, but we from the West get the impression that AIDS, yes, HIV is kind of suppressed. And in a way I don't understand it, because either there is HIV or there isn't. But then I have seen movies from Sangomas who heal people, you know, the black healers who use totally different ways than ours to heal people, or at least support people, help people, make them feel part of what's happening, not like you have AIDS and we put you in a hospital and no, do something about it. And even the white people go there to the Sangoma.
Yes.
When I see that, I feel that I don't understand how can the South African government say there is no HIV, or that the relationship between AIDS and HIV is different. Is that a cultural thing, or is that...
No. In fact, the South African government never said that. You see, that's one of the misinterpretations that you get outside here. The South African government, even though I'm not their spokesman, you see, I'm one of the biggest critics of the South African government myself, you know. But they've never said that there is no relationship between AIDS and HIV. That was a misinterpretation. In fact, the whole anti-AIDS campaign in South Africa is based on the premise that HIV causes AIDS. You see, And everywhere you go, that is the teaching that you get. What happened was that the president himself, on his own, as an individual, as a person, you see, made a statement that, well, there is no conclusive proof that HIV is the sole cause of AIDS. There must be other causes as well. Then he named also other things that makes the situation worse, such as poverty and so on, you see. And he made it clear, I mean, that was his own personal position. As an individual, he has the right to hold a position. But that position of the president is not the position of the South African government, because I've been involved in many AIDS campaigns, and I know very well that all the campaigns that our government supported, you see, they teach people and stress that HIV leads to AIDS, you see.
Okay, but
that direct causal effect.
But then coming back to that,
yes.
So would you say the president had what we would call a more holistic view? He would say it's not only a direct causal relationship, there is a whole thing. You could say that AIDS is a disease that comes from our modern culture, yes?
Yeah.
Including sexual freedom and stuff like that, but not only.
Yes.
And there are other people that claim that too.
What the president was saying, I mean, there are many other people who actually say that, you know.
But so you say it's misunderstood in the world as South Africa doesn't acknowledge the relationship between this and this.
Yes.
And one of the things that we got from is that using medicine or drugs against HIV might actually lead to AIDS. That was some notion that we got, that the cure in some cases was worse than the disease.
Now, even that one, you see, there was never anything like that. What was happening was that the anti-AIDS activists in South Africa were saying that the government must give certain antiretroviral drugs to AIDS patients free of charge. They must supply those, you see. And the government was resisting that. It was saying that, there's still no proof that those particular antiretroviral drugs, you see, have any good effect in as far as that was concerned. Yes, that was what they were saying then. Yeah.
Okay. I still have a feeling so that we get the news from South Africa or the developments filtered. Yes, South Africa is seen as a problem area in the world, and whatever comes out of it must be taken a little bit critical. Yeah.
But then, you see, I would not blame you here that what you get is filtered, because what you are saying now, you see, is not only from here. Even in South Africa, you see, that is what the newspapers there, that's the view that the newspapers presented, even in South Africa itself. That misinterpretation was done even there. You see that.
Now we come back to your role. You are a playwright.
Yes.
Plays are socially seen the back door of the press, yes? Books and plays and even songs sometimes reach audience a different route. It's not on television, it's not on the newspaper, but the message comes through. Yes? Some songs from the 60s we remember. Some lines we remember. Some things. Do you see a role for yourself of spreading your truth, which is also a subjective view, through your plays?
Well, you see, first and foremost, I see myself as a storyteller. That is my first role, you see, as an entertainer also. Now, in the course of all that, of course, there might be new truths that are emerging. But there will be new truths that emerge from my own perspective, from my own interpretation of the world, which might not necessarily be your interpretation of the world. You see that? And that interpretation will be an interpretation that carries my own values.
But that's the definition
You
of
see.
art. You create
Yes.
your, or you
Yes.
you express your reality.
I express
And
my
if
reality.
If your reality
Yes.
is the same as mine, I don't want to read your books because then I
Yeah.
already know.
Right, you see.
It's this exchange of
Yes.
creating new and wider and different realities. That's what plays art.
Definitely,
But
definitely.
obviously, there's a social activist or political statement in your plays. Yeah?
Well, yes, there's always that in my work generally. You might find that because a lot of the work that I do will have a political message here and there, you know.
Did you, when you grew up, you were part of anti-apartheid?
Oh yes. I'm from a family, a long tradition of freedom fighters. My father, in fact, was the founder member of the ANC Youth League and the former president of the ANC Youth League in the 1940s, 47, 48. And even when I went into exile in 1963, I was still a teenager then. It was not for my own political activities.
It was your father's.
It was my father's, who took the whole family then into exile. And I was in exile for 32 years, you know, living first of all in Lesotho, and then in America, and then in England. I only went back to South Africa in 1995, you see, after our first elections.
Is that
see.
hard? Because you've grown up in an atmosphere where apartheid was seen as evil, as
Yes.
something to be fought by weapons at times, yes?
Yes,
by,
yes,
by,
yes.
by force. And now the main message is to love those opponents again, otherwise
Yes.
there will be no nation.
Yes.
That must be a very hard...
Oh, no. Not at all. In fact, you see...
Well, it's very Christian to love your...
Well, me, I'm not even a Christian at all. But the realities of life have taught me that, you see, you do not hold a grudge and you need to have compassion. You see that? And to me, that has nothing to do with religion or Christianity, because as I told you, I'm not even a Christian. You see that? It has to do with the realities of life. We all belong to South Africa. You see that? Those who oppressed us are Africans as well. They belong there. You see? And for us to build a new society, we have no choice but to learn to live together.
I agree, we have no choice.
Yes.
But there is crime, there is racism, there are all these things. How long will it take for the average South African who has not traveled the world, who has not expressed himself in writing, to come to this understanding that there's only one way out, and it is to...
It is going to take long. It won't be an overnight thing. You see, in 1994, apartheid came to an end. All the laws in the books that were apartheid laws were removed from the books. So there is no apartheid now. But there is still the apartheid of the mind. Because you see, you cannot change the mind of the people overnight. You see that? So indeed, racism will continue to be there. That I understand.
And racism from both sides?
From both sides, yes. Anger from one side as well. Because it is true that you will find black people who are still angry about the past, even today, you know, who feel that, in fact, you see, there can be no way forward unless there is justice, you know. Unless, you know, those who did wrong to them pay for that, you see. But there are also many of us who believe that, in fact, for us to have progress and to have peace, it is better to forgive the past. Not to forget it, by the way, because I believe that memory is the weapon. It is important, very important, to remember the past all the time.
Now, that's what we started.
So that, you see, what has been done to us must never be done again to us, but also must never be done by us to other people. And we can only learn those lessons if we remember the past.
Some countries in South Africa, show that that's a very hard lesson to learn for people. That there's now suppression of the white people in Rhodesia, whatever.
Yeah, you see, that's a very hard lesson to learn. But it is important to learn it, because if we do not, then we'll have a cycle of violence that will never end.
Okay, let me come back to religion. You said you're not a Christian, but what you
Yes.
explain here is very Christian. But what is your religion?
My religion. Well, I come from a very strong Catholic family. That is now my parents and so on. So I was baptized in the Catholic Church and all that. But of course, I moved away from that form of religion, many years ago. I don't really believe in structured religion as such. But that does not mean that I'm not a spiritual person. I am a spiritual person, but not in the sense of organized religion.
Does that go for many African people, that they are more spiritual than that they are coded and dogmatized into one specific religion?
Well, I know that there are people like that, but there are many other Africans who have been socialized into organized religion, who are staunchly Catholic or staunchly Dutch Reformed or staunchly Methodist.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, this is very interesting, because even for me, South Africa is it's there, and we were kind of seeing it going downhill, and now there's a plateau, and there's still crime and stuff, but it seems a little bit more stable at least. And so
you see, for me who lives there, I never saw it going downhill. I saw it going up every day. I see things improving every day for my people. I see very exciting things that are happening in that country. I think it is wonderful to live there at this time in our history.
Being part of that
move. Of that great movement. Yes.
Zakes Mda. En we hebben gesproken over theater en cultuur en taal en over Zuid-Afrika en of we er wat van begrijpen en of ik er wat van begreep en hoe dat al in elkaar zat. Maar even terug naar de feiten. Zakes Mda is een toneelschrijver die in het kader van een project een toneelstuk aan het schrijven is. Dat heet De Klok van Amersfoort, The Bells of Amersfoort. Dat gespeeld gaat worden door de Nieuw Amsterdamse theatergroep. Samen met de Sibikwa Community Theater Project uit Zuid-Afrika. En dus inderdaad bruggen probeert te slaan tussen die twee beschavingen. En daarbij heel interessant eigenlijk die religie. Want Amersfoort en die klokken hebben iets met de kerk te maken. Maar ook met de kerk in Zuid-Afrika. Hij heeft dus een brug gevonden om dingen aan elkaar te knopen. Het verleden, en dat herhaalt hij steeds, dat we niet mogen vergeten. Ook in Zuid-Afrika, de apartheid mogen we niet vergeten. We moeten wel vergeven, maar niet vergeten. We moeten weten wat de waarheid was. En dat van daaruit dan weer in het heden kijken wat we kunnen gaan doen. En hij eindigt dan met een heel positieve gevoel. Hij zegt, het is fantastisch om in Zuid-Afrika te zijn op dit moment. In deze tijd waarin die overgang zo dramatisch is, misschien aan de ene kant, maar ook zo heel spannend en zo inspirerend. En dit gesprek was voor mij in ieder geval ook inspirerend. Thank you, Zakes.
Thank you.